Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at energy fields. It is time for another update, and today we'll be discussing the structure that has formed here in the smaller time frame since the previous video, where we were tracking this idea of an internal 1-2 setup and we were looking with preference for continuation higher in a wave 3. And we have actually already managed to get here to the ideal target within such a wave 3. Yeah, we just touched here in the last hour the 138.2% extension of the wave 1. Yeah, we mentioned here the $18 level in the previous video, and we will be discussing more about this area and this structure. But before we get there, I would like to go quickly through the larger time frame for any of you who might be new. And here we are tracking this idea of a larger 1-2 setup, which suggests that we should be looking for the ideal target for the wave 3 to be reached if we really are to follow through within this scenario. Now that would be here at around the $130 level, the 138.2% extension. And since we have already formed here the wave 1, 2, and 3, we may have formed even the wave 4 bottom, but we only expect to form a fifth wave to continue this overall uptrend. Well, while it is still possible to extend into this ideal target, even within a wave 5, it is not necessarily a particularly high probability interpretation, and we should be prepared to get to something more in the reasonable levels region, something like the 100% extension of the initial wave to the upside, which is in fact the ideal target for a wave C. Now you see, if we actually fail to get here to the ideal target for the wave 3, well, I will not be able to reliably track a correction in a wave 4 and continuation afterwards. Yeah, this could be a large wave 4 correction, but I would not be able to track this reliably and then a continuation to the upside in another wave 5 to have our initial 5-wave move to the upside. But instead, I would need to be prepared for a couple of other interpretations, yeah? Something like a possible 1-2-1-2 setup. Sure, we could be looking for a wave 2 correction, but that would already have a larger area of support that would actually imply that we could very easily extend even lower within a correction than we would expect normally for a wave 4. But also what is possible is for this to be an ABC pattern that actually ties in very well within a larger time frame. Yeah, the overall downtrend that has been forming on this chart could imply that this is just a corrective pattern that could still lead even to new all-time lows in a continuation of this larger trend. Now, this is not a must, even if we form something like an ABC structure, and if we break below the beginning of this structure to the upside, which is entirely possible, we can still track an overall continuation in a large leading diagonal. But the idea of an ABC structure, which is overall in place if we fail to get to the ideal target for the wave 3, implies a high risk of a very large correction. Now, with that said, at the moment, within all these scenarios, we actually prefer to extend higher. Yeah, even if we are to push within a wave 3 and extend here to the upside, we may get even further extensions, as this could be something like a double 1-2-1-2 setup, and in fact, this would be the actual wave 3. But for now, we are focusing on something more reasonable, something within the region, the idea of a fifth wave to be developing within this area. And in this region, in the previous videos, yeah, in many of the previous videos actually, we had this area of support and we were looking for a 3-wave correction to the downside, which we have already achieved, and we got into the area of support before starting this more significant reversal to the upside. And while I cannot confirm that this structure has indeed bottomed within the wave 4, I can tell you that the structure to the downside is complete and it doesn't need any additional lows to be considered done, and that we could be looking in a fifth wave or for a fifth wave to the upside. However, we need still to break here the area of resistance between the $16.5 all the way up to the $23 level. Already within the first push to the upside, we see that this initial level of resistance is where we got our first more significant rejection, and unfortunately, we only managed to create a 3-wave move to the upside within this area. And while I could technically allow this to be considered a 1, 2, 3, 4th, and the 5th, and it could work out without any issues, it isn't necessary. This could very easily work out as an ABC movement, which is why we are tracking primarily this structure at the moment as an ABC. And then we were tracking still the area of support that would allow us to continue higher with decent likelihood that managed to actually provide the support. And what became interesting is here when we managed to form here a potential initial 5-wave move to the upside internally, and then this allowed us to look with decent probabilities for an internal 1-2 setup that would allow a third wave to be developing. And surely enough, even though we did find resistance here a couple of times, a couple of rejections within this ABC movement to the downside, we did hold here an internal area of support, and we did continue in this overall uptrend to the upside, while also managing to prove that we are indeed on the correct path. Yeah, we managed to break through the first or the last level of resistance. We had a retest, and in fact we actually got stopped here just perfectly at the previous stops that we had formed here within this structure. Yeah, and we had the retest of the previous level of the smaller time frame level of resistance. Then we broke above the next level of resistance, we had a retest once again, and we continued in this overall uptrend. Now, I won't keep all of this on this chart, and in fact we can even remove this smaller time frame interpretation in yellow that would suggest further direct continuation lower. And within this wave 3 to the upside, I believe we should expect still further continuation, as within this structure I am tracking an impulse at the moment. I am tracking this structure as something like a 1-2 setup, and this would be still an ongoing internal wave 3. We can in fact even add a count for such an idea, and I believe even within this wave 3 we can actually still see further extensions. Now, to be clear, this is not the only pattern that I can track this movement within. I could also be tracking it as an overall diagonal movement, something like an ABC that would be developing, but in fact I would expect a very similar structure to unfold within this extension to the upside still. Now, clearly we are having a very extended wave 5 in this area, and I would say it is unfolding also as an ending diagonal in of itself, but the main scenario that I'm tracking here internally is something like a very tiny 1-2 setup here, a third wave all the way up here, a fourth wave down, and then this would be a fifth wave that I am tracking. And there are a few ways we could actually track continuation within this structure. So within the wave 5, we still expect to form something like a 5-wave move to the upside, and in that case, within this pattern, I could consider this wave 3 to only have, in fact, the wave A complete. We could be looking for a wave B and then a wave C to the upside. But I don't want you to necessarily expect all of these waves to work out. We may build something like a 1-2, and this would have been the ABC within the wave 3. Yeah, the wave 3 may already be complete, and after a fourth and a fifth, we could have a more significant top already in place. And clearly, we can start to see some more significant divergences already play out on this chart. Yeah, the structure is slowing down, and even at this point, I believe we should be prepared for an even more significant top to already be in place. I'm not outruling the possibility of having this, well, not this wave 3, but this wave 3 already complete and to be looking for an internal wave 4 correction, part of the overall larger wave 3. And remember, we did already achieve the ideal target for this wave 3. We don't technically need to push higher to consider it complete. It's just that the structure, the count, actually allows for further extensions. And in this case, the most important area of support that I would be focusing on here internally would be here for a wave 4 correction between the $17.1 all the way down to the $16.1 level, where a break below the 50% retracement would highly suggest that this structure is likely over and that we should expect a more significant and substantial pattern to the downside, where, yeah, to be honest, it's nothing too reliable. Could be something like an ABC movement overall to form an even larger structure. But to be honest, in all counts, I do still prefer to form at least this wave 3, yeah? At least this structure in a 1, 2, 3, 4th, and the 5th to build this. That doesn't need to be a wave 3, but would ideally form a 5-wave structure in the end. And then here internally within this structure that could still extend higher, I wouldn't recommend to look too much into the area of support, but the first relevant level that I can provide you would be here at around either the 23.6% retracement for this as a wave 3 and a wave 4, the $17.7 level, or for the smaller area, the potential ABC movement, the $17.5 level at the 38.2% retracement. In the end, it's gonna be a very similar level that I expect a larger correction once it occurs to extend to, although right now we are still consolidating at a very high level, and there is no reason to believe that it cannot extend higher in a more direct fashion. Yeah, in the end, I wouldn't look too much into the internals of this structure and focus on the larger time frame where we have this area of support that, of course, if we extend higher, it would need to be adjusted as well, but clearly a break below the $16.2 level, the 16.1 let's say, would be a strong signal that this structure may not manage to form the fifth wave, maybe within a diagonal pattern, but to be honest, that doesn't fit too well either. And in the end, yeah, we should be focusing on the larger time frame where we expect still this structure to extend. And don't forget to actually zoom out and remember to look at the larger time frame. Yeah, from this area's perspective, we did manage to get into the area of support, we did manage to create a reaction, and now we even broke above the area of support. But however, don't forget either the resistance levels that go all the way up to the $23 level. Right now we are heading into the 50% retracement that I did mention previously. That should be a point where we should expect some headwinds. Yeah, we also have here structural resistance that have been formed when we formed these more significant tops previously. Those levels could be more difficult to break. It would be an area that wouldn't be too surprising to actually form a more significant internal wave 3 top within. But for now, these are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.